Hello, my name is Aethes Gray. When we think of fantasy, one name stands above the rest. J.R.R. Tolkien. I have read The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion, and I was impressed greatly by all of them. His work has defined the genre and set a standard that many have tried to match, yet few have approached. All fantasy that came after him owes a debt to his writing. But just what makes Tolkien the greatest fantasy author of all time? To me, it is his unparalleled focus on world building. Unlike most authors who begin with characters or plot, Tolkien started with trying to make a world for a fictional language that he created. But he ended up making an entire universe, complete with its own languages, histories, and cultures. This approach created a depth that remains unmatched. The world he made for his books is what made him so great of an author. Part 1. Tolkien's World Building. Tolkien's journey into world building began with his love of languages. He was a professor of English at Oxford and was deeply interested in languages. He first came up with the fictional language of Quenya, an Elvish tongue, and it was from there that Middle-earth sprung up. He began crafting a world for his languages, and then he began writing stories for the world. The invention of languages is the foundation. The stories were made rather to provide a world for the languages than the reverse. J.R.R. Tolkien. This philosophy is evident in the Silmarillion, where Tolkien lays out the creation of his universe, which was his life's work. For him, the tales of Frodo, Aragorn, and the One Ring were only pieces of a much larger puzzle. His stories are like windows into a vast and ancient world, one that exists independently of the narrative. He spent his entire life working on the Silmarillion, and it was published only after his death, with heavy editing from his son. His stories stemmed from his world building, and this made them feel all the more real. Part 2. The Depth of Middle-earth. Middle-earth isn't just a setting. It's a living, breathing world. Every mountain, forest, and river has a purpose and a history. Consider the Shire, with its idyllic rolling hills and simple hobbit life. Contrast that with the dark and desolate Mordor, shaped by centuries of war and Sauron's influence. These places feel real because they're deeply rooted in the histories and cultures Tolkien created. And it's not just geography. The peoples of Middle-earth, elves, dwarves, men, hobbits, and orcs, have unique traditions, beliefs, and ways of life. Their stories intertwine with the world's histories, making Middle-earth feel as alive and complex as our own. For example, the elves have a profound connection to immortality and sorrow, reflecting their long history and the burden of enduring through ages. Meanwhile, the dwarves' culture of craftsmanship and mining speaks to their deep bond with the earth and their ancestors' creation by Alle. Each race's identity contributes to the larger story of Middle-earth, creating a tapestry of interconnected lives and destiny. It truly feels like an actual, lived-in world. Something else that makes it feel so real is the mysteries he left, such as what the Watcher in the Waters was, or where the Blue Wizards went. Just like in real history, some things will never be known, and that just makes the world feel all the more real. Part 3. Why world building matters in fantasy. So why does world building matter so much in fantasy? At its core, fantasy offers an escape. Readers and viewers want to immerse themselves in a world that feels tangible, even if it's full of magic and wonder. World building creates the foundation for that immersion. A rich world is one which you want to immerse yourself in, to get to know more and more. Immersive worlds make you all the more interested in them. Tolkien's work excels because it's immersive without feeling artificial. Every element, from the music of the Ainur to the lineages of Gondor's kings, adds depth. This depth allows fans to explore Middle-earth beyond the main narrative. It's why people continue to study his appendices, maps, and lore decades after the books are published. It is this level of immersion that distinguishes great fantasy. Worlds like Middle-earth encourage fans to imagine themselves within these spaces, asking questions like, what would life be like in the Shire? Or, what kind of adventures could I have in Rohan? Tolkien's gift was his ability to make these fantasies not just possible, but probable. He made a world that you wanted to live in. Part 4. Tolkien's Legacy. Tolkien's approach to world building has shaped the entire fantasy genre. Many fantasy authors have cited him as an influence. Even franchises like The Elder Scrolls and The Witcher reflect his meticulous attention to detail. And musicians like Led Zeppelin were also inspired by his works. Here are the lyrics to one of their songs, Ramble On. Ain't tellin' no lie, mine's a tale that can't be told. My freedom I hold dear, how years ago, in days of old, when magic filled the air. 'Twas in the darkest depths of Mordor I met a girl so fair, but Gollum and the evil one crept up and slipped away with her. Her, yeah. Ain't nothing I can do. No. Led Zeppelin, Ramble On, 1969. As said by Terry Pratchett, J.R.R. Tolkien has become a sort of mountain, appearing in all subsequent fantasy in the way that Mount Fuji appears so often in Japanese prints. Sometimes it's big and up close. Sometimes it's a shape on the horizon. Sometimes it's not there at all, which means that the artist either has made a deliberate decision against the mountain, which is interesting in itself, or is in fact standing on Mount Fuji. But Tolkien's influence goes beyond just inspiring others. His work has been adapted into blockbuster films, video games, even if some of them are not the best, and card games, such as in Magic the Gathering. The depth of Middle-earth remains a gold standard, proving that world building is not just a backdrop, but the very essence of great fantasy storytelling. The countless adaptations of Tolkien's work demonstrate the timeless appeal of his world. Even when interpreted through new lenses, a Middle-earth's foundations remain as solid as ever, a testament to the strength of Tolkien's vision. His world has inspired many other creators. Conclusion: why Tolkien's world building endures. J.R.R. Tolkien is the greatest fantasy author because he understood what makes the genre truly magical. By starting with languages, histories, and cultures, he created a universe that feels as vast and real as our own. His work proves that the best fantasy doesn't just tell a story, it builds a world. When we read his works, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, we are transported to the world of Middle-earth, to the black gates of Mordor, to Numenor, to the Misty Mountains. Tolkien didn't just write books, he created a legacy that continues to inspire us to dream of worlds as rich and extraordinary as Middle-earth. World building is what makes fantasy so great. When we read a fantasy book or watch a fantasy movie, we get transported to another world, one full of wonder. At the heart of every great fantasy lies a world we long to explore, and Tolkien's Middle-earth remains the deepest and the greatest of them all. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing.